Hello, Salama family. Welcome to another discussion. Today's topic is Maasai, one of the lost tribes of Israel, Yasharal. Fortunately, family, we have awakened. We are not lost anymore. Thanks to Yahuwah for this awakening. The Maasai is one of the most peculiar tribes in East Africa that have kept most of their ancient traditions and history intact and alive. And most notably, they have kept the name Maasai, as we can see from First Chronicles chapter 9, verse 12. So today's discussion will be very interesting. I believe you will get edified, you will learn, and of course, join me in this journey as we dive in. We'll be using scripture as usual, empirical evidences, history, and oral traditions. I'll start with scripture. First Chronicles chapter 9, 12 to 13, and I quote, Enadiah, the son of Yahoram, the son of Pashur, the son of Malchiah, and Maasai, the son of Adiel, the son of Yasharal, the son of Meshulam, the son of Meshilemith, the son of Immer, and their brethren, heads of the house of their fathers, 1,760. They were very able men for the work of the service of the house of Yahuwah. You can see family, majority of Maasai Morans are very fierce. They resisted British colonization in Kenya and Tanzania for a long time, and they were widely feared by these colonial powers, Euro-Gentiles. Let's dive in to history. The Maasai are one of the most iconic and culturally distinct ethnic groups in East Africa, primarily residing in Kenya and Tanzania. Their origins, oral traditions, and theories connect them to biblical history and offer a fascinating look at how cultural identity and narrative intersect. Majority of them claim they came from Misri, which is Misraim. So first, we look at historical and anthropological origins. Number one, the Nilo-Saharan heritage. The Maasai speak a Ma language, which is a Nilotic language, which is classified as Nilo-Saharan or Afro-Asiatic language, alongside the Sambur and the Njems, and also alongside the Kunama in Eritrea, as well as their Kalenjin brethren. They claim they migrated south from Misri through the Nile Valley, through Sudan, South Sudan, and ancient Ethiopia regions. They arrived in East Africa between the 15th and 18th centuries. Other accounts put it as 7th and 8th centuries, which is more believable for me. They came through the Great Rift Valley, grazing their large herds of cattle. And we also look at, secondly, the Maasai oral history and mythology, the creation myth. They believe Enkai or Engai, which is the supreme deity or creator, created all the things in the earth and is manifested not as a female or as a male. They believe Enkai entrusted them with the guardianship of the gift of cattle, and of course, they believed all the cattle belongs to them, especially amongst their neighboring tribes. They descended from Kerio escarpment, Kerio Valley, which is all the way going through to Ethiopia, the valley of Yehoshaphat, which is Har Megiddo. And through this descent, they have kept most of this ancient history and traditions. Connections to the Bible and the lost tribes theory. This gained traction primarily during the 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries. Western explorers, missionaries, and colonial administrators observed several striking cultural and religious parallels between the Maasai and the ancient Hebrew customs, especially in the Old Testament, as per the Torah. Key parallels that fuel this theory include: number one, monotheism. Unlike many neighboring Bantu groups, especially non-Bantu Israelite groups that practiced polytheism, the Maasai and other Bantu Israelites practice monotheism primarily. Also, secondly, we have the Maasai name in 1 Chronicles 9:12, which we have looked at in the past, and of course, third, their pastoralist lifestyle. Their nomadic lifestyle, primarily centering entirely around herding cattle, sheep, and goats, mirrors those of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of course, our ancestors. The fourth one is dietary and ritual laws. So, traditionally, the Maasai do not eat wild game or even seafood. They restrict their diet heavily to their livestock, reminiscent of the kosher dietary laws. They also practice male circumcision as a vital rite of passage into adulthood. Though they don't do it in infancy, just like majority of the Israelites, I think the Akamba have kept the 8-day circumcision alive amongst the Israelites. Also, historically, the Maasai used a sacrificial system involving unblemished animals to appease Enkai or Engai. And you remember, these people are Levites, so they have done this for generations, for millennia, and this is not lost on them. So we have the modern perspective. So while the lost tribe theory remains a popular and deeply respected narrative amongst various cultural groups, historians and genetics point out that these cultural similarities are likely examples of cultural convergence, according to Eurogentiles. Nevertheless, the Maasai who have embraced Christianity have still kept most of their ancient traditions and culture alive up to today. We look at the traditions of the Maasai by Fritz Hommel. He borrowed heavily from the late Captain Maka, and he discusses on the similarities of the Maasai as well as per the foundings of Captain Makar in his 1910 book, which I strongly advise you read it family, you learn a lot. So he discussed on the language, monotheism, history, and did a lot of investigations on linguistics. He also linked this to other peoples in East Africa, which is the Nuba, Gala, Somali, which is primarily Akushitic peoples, as well as the Maasai and the Nandi, which is Nilo-Saharan, Nilotic groups. And I have told you earlier, language is not very important because we have a lot of people in Nilotic language classifications who are not Israelites. Same case to the Bantus and same case to the Cushites as well. So I will not dwell here a lot. I will dive in and look at other works by Shaland, Maasai, the Lost Tribes of Israel, Maasai warriors, God's chosen people. So you see, family, these people have always known the Maasai were one of the true people of Yahuwah. So I quote, they say this is a Jewish story of Africa that I found in the most unlikely of places, the vast plains of Masai Mara and Serengeti reserves. As we drove there, we saw the light-skinned, tall, slender people dressed in red who were as ubiquitous to the landscape as sky above and earth below. So, talking about the Maasai and discussing about them, she's also greatly borrowing from M. Makra 1904 works, which was retranslated in 1910. And I quote from Maka: I regard the Maasai as being descended from the nomadic Semites, to whom the oldest Hebrew pastoralists belong, pronounced Maka in his study. So most of these Zionist leaders and movement have always known the Maasai are part of the lost tribes, and we'll see in some of these arguments that was argued just below this article that I have read. And let me just finish the summary and then we'll continue downwards. So these peoples have always tried to learn the Maasai language, culture, and understand the peoples. They have a lot of tourists going down there, learning culture, even living amongst the Maasai, even some Europeans getting married. There's also another one that even wrote a book called The White Maasai. You can also have a look at it, family. So this is a summary of the observations of Shaland, and she was saying the Maasai do not have chiefs, which is very true, and their lives are governed normally and majorly by a collective group of elders chosen for their wisdom and moral qualities. They have an assembly which is akin to Sanhedrin. It is called something similar, I understand. And so when a highly respected elder dies, he is buried in the ground facing east, and every passerby places a stone on the grave as a sign of respect. And after a while, a small hill appears on the landscape. This is basically ancient Israelite traditions as per the Bible. So we'll look at some of the arguments. I'll start by some of the Ish arguments as well as the real Maasai people's arguments. So one of the members called Yehuda Amir: as long as the Maasai keep worshipping idolatry as Christians and worship a fellow dead Jew, Yeshu, it is confirmation that they are not the lost tribe. The name Maasai mentioned in Tanakh is not necessarily that they are the current Maasai. I know this is very unusual for people to say this because even most of them do not even understand the ancient traditions of the Israelites. He also goes to say Yeshu is an idol, and this makes the Maasai as well idolatrous. And he say yes, the DNA proof that 51% have Jewish DNA. I don't know if this is true, family, because I don't believe in DNA shenanigans. One must keep kosher, Shabbat, and all these things. But I understand the saltiness, family. So we move. So John Sarkar, which is part of the Maasai people's sons, says here, I quote, I bet that there are some similar issues in Biblical Old Testament version and in Maasai cultural practices, e.g., sacrificing pure animals without blemish, eating of meat with bitter herbs, which they still do up to today, Mount Sinai as Lonyo Lepasinai, Jerusalem as Arus Alal, Nazareth as Nesirat, amongst many other things. We'll continue in some of these comments. Salau Rogei, which is a Maasai name, says most Maasai men go to the meat camps every August. And in one of these camps, I observed that the hip bone is always thrown away. I asked one of the elders, and he simply said, because we are prohibited from eating it. Then I remembered Jacob's story when he wrestled with Yahuwah, with the angel of Yahuwah family. So most of these ancient Israelites tribes, similarly from the Bantu and as well as from the Israelite sides in the Nilotic and Cushitic sides, do not eat the hip joint. They don't. I have found this in a few language classifications, like 5 or 6 of them, and I'm still continuing with research, but this is very important to note. Nchoe, JP, who is a Sambur or Samburu, as many people like to call them, shared some similarities between the Maasai and the so-called Jews, because remember, in 2015, this was not well spread and the awakening was not well advanced like right now. So he says, Maasai do not eat meat. On the same day, they have eaten milk or dairy products, which is true for the Kalenjins, which is true for the Oromo, which is true for the Kunama, which is true for the Lemba. So they also have legends similar to the stories of Samson and Delilah, Isaac and Jacob, David and Goliath. They also worship one deity called Enkai. They also worshipped him through sacrifices, which we know because they were priests. The Maasai do not eat milk with blood, of course. They have been introduced this culture when they said they were starving in Khartoum. They call it Khartoum, and there's an interesting story because of that as well. They also have male circumcision, and of course, they have a physical body structure resembling those of ancient Israelites. I will go straight on to the history of the Maasai alongside the Bible, the interactions between them two. So I'll look, we have a lot of stories in the Bible. The names might be different, some might be similar or close. So I'll read quickly. I will not read everything in the interest of time. So we have Adapad, which is literally the Adam story in the Bible. You can literally find out in the book. And even if you Google it family, we have Lengeni, Lamech, which is also a part of Shemites. If you look at the genealogy of Shem in the Bible, we have Tumbainot, which is Noah's story. Interesting family. We have almost all biblical stories in their ancient history and oral history. We have Sem, which is basically Shem. This is not disputed. We have Oschomo or Ham. They call him Ham. And in the Bible, it is Ham, which is basically the same story. We also have Bartimaro or Japheth, which is Japheth's lineage. We have Mutari, which is Isaac, children of promise, the child of promise. We have Musa or Musana, which is the Moses, the Exodus deliverer story. Very similar biblical parallels. Metene, which is Aaron, which is part of the tribe of the Maasai because they were a priest nation. We have Kidongoi, which is Gideon, Aaron, which is the hereditary high priest. And you will see family, most of the Maasai, even up to today, still pray when Kenyan parliament have come from recess or even during national holidays. I think I'll put one of the links in the description box so that you can see what I'm saying. This is a summary of what we have just looked at. I will not go over this again. So let's continue. So we have other names like Enkapa, which is Enoch parallel. I will also not read, but I'll put here for you to read family. We have Olmani, which is Abraham, the hard patriarch. We have Sendeu, which is akin to Esau, warrior paradigm. We also have Lenana, Jacob, which is the inheritor. And it's very interesting because I have heard this. We also have peaks even in Mount Kenya called Lenana, Batian, Sendeu. According to ancient biblical parallels, this story has been kept alive by this tribe. We have Masen, which is Melchizedek. This is the priest king ancestor. They also have this story in their ancient stories. The Olmeni, Joshua, faithful scout or figure that gave us the promised land. And you see, family, we have places like Gilgil, which is Gilgal. We have places like Kericho, which is Jericho in Kenya, I believe, because this whole land of Kenya all the way to Ethiopia was part of ancient lands of Yahuda, Judah. We have Kitoip, which is the Joseph provider archetype. We also have Sitoni, which is Balaam, prophetic seer. Interestingly, I have also had a look at this, and it is very similar to the Balaam Balak story in Judges and Numbers 23. Naibor, which is Sarah, which is the matriarch of light, parallel. Enyang, which is Elijah, or Eliyahu, the prophet of fire. So this is also a summary of what we've just seen. So if you want, you can pause and go back to learning this. I also have a few supporting evidences. We have even a movie that was done about the Maasai, 10th lost tribe of Israel in 2019. We have other places you can find some of these writings. You see, there's a lot of writings on this family, and there is no smoke without fire, mostly done by Gentiles, of course. So we have notable names bearing these Maasai names. Mark Maasai is a notable media personality who hails from Narok, which is a Maasai pure territory. But what I have come to find out, family, is this name Maasai is also shared amongst the Kalenjins, and in fact, the Kalenjins use the name Maasai more than even the Maasai, because you find a lot of Kalenjin Maasai names as opposed to the real Maasai names. So we have Linet Chepkemoi Maasai, who is an athlete. She has a lot of honors, and you can see most of the Kalenjins anyway, they are runners, alongside the Oromo, who are their cousins, and even some Maasais like David Rudisha. And these genes are shared all over, even to America, as we shall see. We have Alex Chesiro Masai, who is also another Kalenjin man bearing this name. We have other diasporans using this name because the spirit is so strong, family. It does not resist boundaries. We have Masai Russell, who is also an athlete from America. Interesting family because we are truly, truly connected. So my additional thoughts, I wrote this quickly, so do not mind the spellings. So I found out that whereas as the Maasai are classed as Nilotes, they are reckoned as Levites alongside the Luya and the Lemba who are Bantu on the other side. Some Maasai have also taken some Muzungu wives who have agreed to be married as fourth or even fifth wives themselves without even being coerced. They truly come and seek to be married there because most of these Muzungu peoples have known the truth for a long time. So Yahuwah is very amazing. He has scattered peoples across the entire language classifications. In fact, I have seen, as I had said earlier, these Maasai elders blessing parliament, blessing the country, and doing a lot of, I would say, prayers for their own people and for Kenya, which is truly a blessing. I have also put a few Maasai names like Lemek, which is Lamek, Kidonoi, Maasai, which is still Maasai, which is interesting as I was doing my notes. So, in conclusion, family, the theory connecting the Maasai to the ancient tribes of Israel, Yasharal, is one of the most fascinating chapters in early East African ethnography, mostly popularized by Western researchers like Moritz Marker and others, highlight striking and undeniable parallels between Maasai traditions and biblical narratives. You cannot deny this, family. They have a shared monotheistic foundations, believing only in one God, narrative parallels, especially with stories similar to those found in the Bible, cultural rituals, of course. We have seen they perform most of these things. And of course, their journey from Egypt all the way to South Sudan, Ethiopia regions, Nile Valley, now to Kenya and Tanzania, Kilimanjaro regions. So the ultimate conclusion: the Maasai do not need a Western or Near Eastern label to validate their majesty. Whether these historical parallels are viewed as literal ancient Israelite roots or as a brilliant testament to the shared spiritual architecture of humanity, the result is the same. The Maasai stand today as one of the most resilient, culturally pure, and fiercely independent societies on earth. They're a living bridge to the ancient world, preserving a way of life that has outlasted empires, survived colonial shifts, and continues to command deep global reverence. That is why we have a lot of tourists to Masai Mara. Maybe one more thing, family, before I leave today. We also have the Mara River, which has many wonders of the world, like the wild beast migration. Mara was the place of bitter waters, according to Torah stories in the Bible. So, family, this concludes my teaching today, and I hope you learned something. And thank you for listening to me. See you soon. Bye bye. Salama.